Hello, my name is Abraham Klein, and today I'd like to get a little controversial on you, because today I'd like to talk about racism. Whoa! It's okay, don't worry. Yeah, I know my melanin is not quite as dark as some. I do have Hispanic on my mother's side, so I do have a little bit of an in that respect. But however, I want to talk about. I'm not talking about BLM or white supremacy or any of that. I mean, I am kind of talking about supremacy and stuff like that. But I'm not going into any of the particular issues necessarily today. What I want to talk about today is why racism doesn't make sense. Okay, that's the basic idea of what I want to talk about today and why racism doesn't make sense. Because through my studies and research and different things that I've done over the years, I've come to the conclusion, that racism doesn't make sense. And here's why. Because we are family. Yes, I said it. We are family. No matter who you are watching right now, we are family. Now, I could say, do a DNA test, and you'll find out that you're not 100% whatever you think you are. You're not 100% anything, literally. I've done a DNA test. I've found that I'm literally everything. And no surprise, I've got a lot of Hispanic from my mother's side and different things like that. But I'm going to find another reason why. And of course, it doesn't matter why I say, you're probably going to disagree anyway. But I want you to consider this one thing. And that is the idea that there is one of you. All right, you're an individual, so there's that good thing. There's one of you. You have two biological parents, whether they were involved in your life or not. You have two biological parents. You have four biological grandparents. Again, whether they were in your life or whether they were alive when you were alive is immaterial. You have four grandparents, okay? So think about this. You have one you, two parents, four grandparents. That means you have 8 great-grandparents. And then so on, okay? So that means with every generation, the amount of grandparents that you have doubles. Literally doubles. Because every grandparent you have has a pair of parents. Okay, so if you have 4 grandparents, then that means they have parents. That's 8 great-grandparents. Okay, so you see where I'm going with this? Okay, so if you go back just 5 generations, that means you have 32 grandparents. Well, that'd be great-great-great-grandparents. Okay, so that's just 5 generations. If you go back 10 generations, that's 1,024 grandparents to the 10th power, I think, or something like that. Anyway, so let's go up just 5 more generations, okay? 5, just 5 more generations. That's 15 generations away from you, all right? That's 32,768 grandparents. All right, now just imagine all these people were still alive and you all had a family, and you would just take forever just meeting the grandparents, let alone all of your cousins. Okay, so, I mean, when you get into the numbers, it really gets unbelievable. Okay, and there's any genealogists, I mean, I've only been doing this for about 2 years now. I mean, there's genealogists they've got. So, I mean, there's too many family. I mean, can we just agree we have too many family? Too much family. I'm just throwing that out there. Okay, so then let's take it all the way to 20. 20 generations back. That means you would have 1,048,576 grandparents. Okay, that's 20 generations ago. Over 1 million grandparents leading down to one you. All right, you're a combination of just little features, little attributes of, I mean, and the truth is, if you go back 20 generations, your ancestors probably look nothing like you. You may have a few feature here, maybe a little twitch in your ear might be the same as them. Maybe your nose might be similar. You might have some chin structure. But, I mean, we're going back 20 generations. So, most likely, your great, whatever, grandparents may not even be the same color as you. Just throwing that out there. Okay, so then let's take it back all the way to 30 generations. 30 generations, okay? How many is that? About how many would that be? Okay, so at 20 generations, we were 1 million, which is a lot of great-grandparents. Well, a lot of great-grandparents, okay? So at 30, okay, are you ready for this? At 30 generations, that puts you at 1 billion, did you like my Trump impression there? Anyway, 1,073,741,824 grandparents. Imagine all those Christmas cards, huh? So my calculator only went to 33 generations. And this is pretty significant. But at 33 generations, I eventually had to use Google and say, hey, how much is this to the some odd power? But at 33 generations, I was able to figure that at 33 generations, you would have, okay, more grandparents than are people currently alive on the earth right now. You would have 8,584,934,592 grandparents. Okay, so let's take it all the way to the 36th power, okay? That comes to 68,719,476,736 grandparents. Okay, that takes us to about, if you're going by the process of 20 to 25 years per generation, that takes you back to about the 1100s. About the year 1120 or something like that. Okay, so that means at that time period, there were approximately 320 million people on the earth. Give or take a few billion, right? A few million. Which means if you had that many grandparents, the 68 billion, that's 200 times more than were people alive on that planet. By the way, currently in the United States, we have about, 320 million people. That's how many people were on the earth, approximately, back in the 1100s, all right? Now, originally, when I started this idea of trying to take back so many generations, I wanted to go to the 50th generation, because I figured, that was doable, okay? So if you go back 50 generations, again, going by 20 to 25 years per generation, that's going back just about 1,000 years. That's not even going back to the BCs. You'd have to go about another 1,000 years to get there. We're just talking about, this isn't even to the time when Christ lived. This is just going back 1,000 years after he was born. Okay? So we're just going back 50 generations. 50 generations. Oh, you know how many grandparents? You know how many grandparents you'd have at 50 generations? 50 generations past? All right. Seeing as we've already had more grandparents than people at the time that they were going on, that means you would have to have 1 quadrillion, 125 trillion. We don't even have this much money existing in the earth right now, but yet you have this many grandparents. 125 trillion, 899 billion, 906 million, 842,624 grandparents at around the year, about 1,025 years ago. Okay? All right. So then I decided to double that, take us all the way back to the BCs. And here's how many grandparents you would have to go if you went 100 generations back, okay? So you have to do this. You have to go 2 to the 100th power, okay? What is 2 to the 100th power?
The answer is 1,267 octillion, 650 septillion, 600 sextillion, 228 quintillion, 229 quadrillion, 400 trillion.
Those numbers, don't even make sense. Okay? And so basically what that means, okay, is that over time, these people, these generations kind of overlap. In other words, there was a study done that found that anybody alive in the 1100s is probably an ancestor of yours. And that's just going back to the 1100s. In other words, what I'm getting at is racism doesn't make sense. They've also estimated that everybody that you see, obviously some people are more related than others. Like I've got direct cousins. I've got a brother. I had a mother and a father. Obviously, they're directly related to me. This is my mother. And there's my first grandmother, my second, and so on. But they've figured out that everybody alive right now is around 50th cousins, at least 50th cousins. So when you decide that somehow your race is superior to another, or that your group, or that your community, or any whatever name you put on it is better or superior to another, remember, you're not thinking you're more superior than another race. Although, yes, I do realize, there are different races and ethnicities as we see them. But the truth is, everybody you see is in some way related to you because we are all of one blood. Of one blood. And if we were to trace it back as far as we could, the Christians believe, it's somewhere around 10,000 years ago, maybe. And I believe evolutionists believe we go back, maybe 400,000 years ago or something like that is when the first humans existed or whatever. And then when you take into account all the invasions people did of different countries. I mean, you had African countries invading places like Europe and Spain. Spain was one of the places that they invaded. You had places like Sicily that they invaded. Then you had, of course, all the European conquerors. You had, Asians conquering different places. And so over time, all of these groups kind of intertwined in some way, whether it was consensual or not. They all kind of, and so everybody you see, when you look down on somebody because of the color of their skin or the nationality that they supposedly come from, you're not justifying the death of a different race. You're literally justifying the death of one of your own family members. Even though you might not be directly related in that you're not that's not your direct first cousin or your direct mother or father. That is somebody that is a part of your family. And so I believe we need to get it out of our minds that we should be divided based on a race, based on not necessarily a race, a color of skin, or the amount of melanin in a person's skin, or the whatever reason we find. It's amazing how we always find reasons to hate one another, but never try to find the reason why we should love one another. And so again, I want you to think about that fact, because very often, people, whether it be sometimes it's the black community, they say, "Oh, that's one of our brothers." No, that's my brother too. That's everybody's brother. We should all be angry about the fact that somebody was murdered or somebody was killed. We're not standing up for a race. We should be standing up for each other because we are all of one blood. And I believe it's the same color as anybody else's skin, as anybody else's blood. And so when you see somebody, you shouldn't be like, "Oh, well, what color are they first? Is it white? Are they white? Oh, okay, then I'll be upset." No. You should say, it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what they believe. Your heart should break when somebody is abused or hurt or murdered or whatever the thing is. We should be upset no matter what. Because again, we're not black, we're not white, we're not Asian, we're not any of these other things. We are people. And if I could get all Jesus on you, we're all creations of God. And when you put that into perspective, maybe then you'll realize that racism is stupid.